While everyone else is making their 10th iPhone 13 leaks video in an attempt to escape the great tech drought of 2021, I decided to spice things up and do a deep analysis of the A15 chip that's gonna be going into the iPhone 13 lineup. And yes, it's gonna be the A15 chip. Don't kid yourselves with the theories about the M1 chip coming to the iPhone. That's absolutely ridiculous and it makes no sense at all. So in this video, I'm gonna discuss all of the leaks and rumors we have about the A15, including some brand new ones that talk about thermal throttling issues, and then I'm gonna use all that info to try and estimate the performance of that chip so you guys will know what to expect. So let's get started. First off, I wanna mention the recent report of Apple ordering absolutely insane amounts of A15 chips, which means that they're expecting to sell a ton of iPhones this year, as well as making sure to lock in their orders to get around the chip shortage issues the world has been having. But thankfully, an analyst recently said that the chip shortage is currently affecting everybody but Apple, which is obviously great news for the iPhone. Now, the main reason for that is because TSMC, the company that manufactures all of Apple's chips, have said that they will be prioritizing Apple first and then automobile companies before everybody else. However, Apple did warn that supply constraints will impact iPhone and iPad this fall, but I honestly don't believe them based on how important they are to TSMC and how many months they've had to prepare for the September launch. The only way they'll have serious constraints is if the iPhone 13 ends up blowing away all expectations, which might actually happen based on the leaks and rumors we've been seeing recently. So if you haven't seen my video on the new expected features for the iPhone 13, definitely watch that after this video. But with that said, let's now get into the actual A15 chip itself and what we should expect from it. The main difference is that the A15 will be built on TSMC's latest 5nm plus or N5P node, which is basically just an optimized or fine-tuned version of the current 5nm transistor process that the A14 is built on. But that doesn't really tell us much about the performance levels we should expect, apart from TSMC's own projections of a 5% performance boost while using the same amount of power. So that brings us to a brand new leak from a forum user on Client.net, who says that there was a leak from Taiwan where someone tested the July sample of the A15 chip and saw that it thermal throttles the most out of any Apple A series chip ever. Now, if you don't know what thermal throttling is, it basically means that a chip's cooling system isn't able to keep it cool enough under full performance load, so it begins to overheat. And the only way to cool it down to a safe level is to limit down the performance or the clock speed of the chip, which in turn lowers the power usage and cools it back down. This exact thing has already been a problem for the iPhone 12, especially the Pro Max model, which has major overheating issues while playing games like Genshin Impact or even while just wirelessly charging, so it sucks to hear that the A15 chip will throttle even more. But getting back into those leaks, they said that in performance benchmark testing, the second run saw a 15% performance decrease due to throttling, with the third run bringing it down 20%, and finally the fourth run going down 30% compared to the first run. So the leakers said that Apple is working on optimizing the chip so that it doesn't throttle any more than 20%, which obviously means that they're gonna have to turn down the clock speed so that it doesn't heat up as much. That is extremely disappointing, and the truth is that Apple is already doing that with the A14 chip's GPU, and here's proof. Both the iPhone 12 lineup and the iPad Air 4 share the same exact A14 chip. But if you compare the Geekbench 5 Metal Test performance, the iPad Air actually gets a 37% higher graphics score, which is insane. That means that the iPhone 12's A14 chip is experiencing around 27% throttling or performance limitation compared to the iPad Air. And all of this is because the cooling system on the A14 chip is absolute garbage, so it overheats easier than I don't know what. Now, we did see reports from the reliable analyst Ming-Chi Kuo way back in January that Apple was aggressively testing vapor chamber thermal cooling systems for use in the iPhone, but it wasn't clear if it would be ready in time for the 2021 iPhone 13 launch. And just based on the up to 30% thermal throttling reports from this leaker, it doesn't seem like Apple is giving us vapor chamber cooling this year. So they're just gonna have to limit the performance to try and help keep it cool. So with that said, just how much performance should we expect from the A15 chip? Well, the same forum leaker said that the difference between the A15 and the future M2 Mac chip will be wider than the difference between the current A14 and the M1. And the main reason for that is that the performance improvement of the M2 is particularly large in terms of the graphics. This totally makes sense because according to a report from Mark Gurman from a few months ago, the M2 chip should be getting an additional 2 GPU cores, up to 10 compared to the M1's current 8 cores. And that's where it seems the extra boost in graphics performance is going to be coming from. Now, the leaker also said that even the new A15 chip will not be able to keep up with the performance of the current M1 chip, which also makes sense because the A15 is expected to keep the same 6-core CPU layout. But in terms of the GPU layout, in my opinion, I personally think that the A15 chip will in fact have a 5-core GPU compared to the A14 chip's 4-core GPU for a couple of different reasons. First of all, we know that the A15 will be using TSMC's new N5P process, which should be more efficient and optimized. So because of that, you would expect the new A15 to actually run a bit cooler than the A14 instead of having more thermal throttling issues like the leaker mentioned earlier. Unless, of course, Apple is planning to add another GPU core, which leads us into the bombshell piece of evidence from Taiwan Economic Daily. They claim that the A15 chip will actually come with a new 5-core GPU design, so Apple is simply going to be adding one more core compared to the A14 chip's GPU. And going further, they mentioned that the GPU will increase the performance by about 35% compared to the A14 chip, which is huge, and it explains where all of that extra thermal throttling is coming from. So if we take the Geekbench 5 metal performance of the A14 chip within the iPad Air 4, which does not throttle, and then add 35% to that score, we can expect a meta score of around 16,800 for the A15 chip. But of course, since even the A14 chip already throttles so much in the current iPhone, all the way down to just around 9,000 metal points, we can also expect the A15 chip to be limited as well in the iPhone 13. So in my personal opinion, there's a good chance that the iPhone 13 will actually score around the same or slightly lower than the A14 in the iPad Air 4, but it's still gonna have a good improvement over the iPhone 12. Now, with the graphics side of the equation out of the way, let's now get into the CPU side of the A15 chip's performance, so let's do that right now. Taiwan Economic Daily has confirmed that the A15 CPU will stick to the same 6-core layout as the A14 with 2 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. But interestingly, they claim that the performance will improve by 20% compared to the A14. So the big question is, where is all of that extra performance coming from? We already know that the N5P node improvements will give us a 5% boost at the same amount of power, but what about the remaining 15%? Of course, Apple will probably up the clock speed of the A15 to give it a bit more performance, but that definitely won't be enough to account for the full extra 15% gain. So that leads me to one final option for how Apple can continue to improve the performance of the A15. Back in March of this year, ARM announced their ARM v9 architecture, which will power the next decade of ARM chips, replacing ARM v8, which has been in use since they announced it way back in 2011. And to quickly sum up ARM v9, it's coming with a bunch of new features which will improve efficiency and performance, performance, like for example, allowing ARM's new cores to execute 30% more instructions per cycle compared to their ARM v8 cores. Now there's definitely a whole lot more to ARM v9 than that, and I explained it all in a different video, so definitely check it out after this one is over. But the point I want to make is that Apple will 100% be switching to ARM v9 for the future of their Apple Silicon chips. But the only question remaining is this: is ARM v9 ready to go for the A15 Bionic chip? Well, ARM themselves have said that we should expect ARM v9 to come in early 2022. But what if Apple can get their hands on it first, since Apple was actually the first company ever to introduce a smartphone chip built on ARM's brand new 64-bit architecture with the A7 chip way back in the day. So I'd say that there's definitely a chance for the A15 to be built on ARM v9, but we can't know for sure just yet. Now going back to that 20% improvement over the A14, that would land the new A15 chip at close to around 5,000 points in Geekbench 5 multi-core, which would make it faster than the A12X and the A12Z iPad Pro, which is incredibly impressive. And beyond all of that, we can definitely expect Apple to improve the performance of the neural engine while adding new hardware encoders and other various chips like faster machine learning accelerators and things like that. So with all that said, the final thing we have to answer is how that extra performance will be realized in everyday use. Now I know you're gonna say that you're not gonna notice the performance improvement since the A14 is already so powerful, but since the iPhone 13 Pro is expected to finally get a 120Hz display, the extra performance will help everything run smoothly at that higher refresh rate. On top of that, the boost in performance will also be used to help Apple continue to improve camera features as well, allowing Apple to increase the sensor speed of the cameras and add new features like the new portrait video mode that Mark Gurman confirmed to be coming to the iPhone 13. That feature alone is going to require a ton of processing power because it's going to have to use the LiDAR scanner data to apply a blur effect in real time while compressing the data and storing it so that you can adjust the blur in post. And since the A15 chip will also come with more efficient small cores, we're expecting the standby battery life to improve on the iPhone 13 as well. So there you guys have it. That's my preview of the A15 Bionic chip coming in the iPhone 13 next month. And if you learned something new from this video, definitely click the circle above to subscribe for more videos like this one. Definitely check out one of those two right there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.